All right, so this is life as an indie developer or something close to that. We've got a list of questions we're going to go through, a bunch of indie developers up here. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of them so we don't have to do the uncomfortable part where everybody tells you something about their games when they answer the question. So I'm going to just go down the list here, and I'm going to say people's names and what they're working on. All of these games are playable out on the show floor, so if you come to the indie developer section, you can play the games. Recognize some folks out there that have come by already. So we're going to start out with Nathan Fouts. He's working on Pig Eat Ball, which is in development for PC, Mac, and Linux. It's a game about pigs eating balls. It's a game about mazes and vomit, is what I would like to describe that as. We have Mo, who's working on Anne, which is due out for Steam on PC, Mac, and Linux next year. It's a huge pixel action adventure shooter. Big game, pretty pixels, lots of, go play it. Evan Greenwood, who's working on Broforce, also on PC, coming to Steam. It is explosions and action stars, or as he describes it, it's a patriotism simulator. Pete Engstad, working on Cannon Brawl. That is right now available on Steam Early Access for PC. It's a 2D action strategy game with destructible terrain. And Richard Perrin, or just Perrin, if you're talking to him conversationally, he's working on Journal for PC, Mac, and Linux. It's due out in 2014. It is a narrative narrative adventure game. So there we go. Not so much action. No, you're not going to be blowing off people's heads like you are in Broforce. And I am AJ Johnson. I've actually been working with Nathan a little bit on Pig Eat Ball, and I also run 8bithorse.com, which is a 2D gaming website. So most of the games that are out on the show floor we've actually covered in some capacity in the past. So there you have it. So we are going to start off. I have a list of questions, and we're going to leave a little time at the end for folks in the audience if you have any questions you would like to ask of the indie folks. But we're going to start off and just kind of, I'll read off a question. We'll just sort of go down the line. Everybody gets a chance to answer, and we'll go on to the next one. So first question is, what made you decide to become an indie developer?
So I guess, like a lot of people like playing games, I think I was always the type of person who knew when I was playing games I wanted to make my own. I wasn't, whenever I play a game, I'd just sit there and think how I did it differently. And I think that kind of like mindset, you're the kind of person who wants to make games, and who, like, I think if you're just a person who enjoys playing them, that's which type you are. And I think from an early age I knew I wanted to make games, but I always heard about the games industry, and I always heard that if you got into the games industry, you wouldn't really get to make your own games. And so kind of like that, like hearing that over and over again, drilled out of me any desire to work in the games industry. So I just at the time, when I started making games, I didn't know indie development was a thing. It was just like, I just want to make my own games. So I just sat down in my bedroom like many people and just learned the languages and just started making stuff. So.
All right. Okay. Moving on.
What was the question?
What made you decide to be an indie developer?
So I think I was in the same boat where when I was a kid, I played a ton of games and always thought about how they might be different and really wanted to try it. And I thought that I wanted to make games for a big company, so I went to school and did programming and got a job at Electronic Arts, but it turns out that wasn't as fun as I thought, so I eventually split off and started doing my own thing.
That's awesome. Similarly, I grew up playing games. I think I was also, I used to create things, like I built mazes and I wrote choose your own adventures, and was always building little games or coming up with rules for existing games. And it just it made sense that I would go into this. But then kind of graduating from high school, there was really nothing I'm from South Africa, by the way, and there was no education that would take me into building games, and there were no jobs in South Africa for people making games. So I ended up doing web design for a few years, which was pretty cool, but I wasn't super happy. And then eventually it was kind of 2007, and Braid had come out or was about to come out, and some games were starting to make money with just people who had built something by themselves as a small team. And suddenly this was possible, and you could make a living doing this. And why not try it from South Africa? So that's what I did.
Yeah, I grew up playing a lot of games, and I really enjoyed them. I didn't actually think I could make them because I assumed games came from Japan. and that was it. I didn't know if there's any other way you could possibly make games. I would design games on paper, similarly, and like I would make the video games on paper and move the little characters around in paper and stuff, but I just gave up on it. Then I went to school, and through a prerequisite, I had to take a computer science class, and in there I started one of our little projects was to make a game, and I figured out, oh wow, it is possible that Americans can make games. And so and from there I got some programming jobs, and I eventually made it into the industry and worked in Insomniac Games and Running with Scissors. And then when I heard the call of Braid, I split off in 2007 and started trying to make money on my own, and managed to not drown since. So it's been pretty good.
Playing games since I'm 5 years old, and I guess I've, just like Nathan said, I was always wondering how games were made or where they came from, and so it actually took a while for me to learn how games were made. And after trying 2 sessions of programming, I realized that I was more of an artist. So I actually went to 3D school, and from there, I've been working as a 3D artist for big video companies for the last 12 years or so. And my last job was art director at Activision on the Spider-Man games. And after working all these years, what I would do is always come home and always work on my own stuff, because I didn't feel fulfillment working, just doing one thing on a game, somebody else's game, and whatnot. So I always had so many ideas. I'd work on small games at home. So I'd go to work, come home, work some more on my own games pretty much every day. And that for 10 years. And finally, last year, I decided that it was time for me to dedicate really myself, because I wasn't happy. I didn't feel, any fulfillment. I thought, what I really have to do is make my own game. This is my driving force. So yeah, last year I decided to really just put everything aside and work on my own game, dedicate myself 100% to that.
Excellent. All right, thank you. So next up, obviously as an independent developer, you're not going into an office, you don't punch a clock, you don't have to show up anywhere for, to an office environment, but you still have to get work done. So I'm curious, what is your work environment like? Are you working at home? Are you working in an office location by yourself with a team? How does that look for you?
Okay, so yeah, I'm someone who always hated working in an office. I've had office jobs over the years, and I always hated it. I always wanted to get out of that 9-to-5 routine, and I wanted to work in my own environment. But now our company started to be a little bit more successful. Our last game did all right. I've now had to recreate the environment I always wanted to get out of. So now I've hired 2 people, and we now have a 9-to-5 office. Well, I say it's an office, it's actually still operating out of our flat right now, because we're kind of in that between stage of I'm no longer just a one-man bedroom coder, but I'm not quite yet earning enough money to rent office space, so we're just 3 of us with desks in our living room, but I still have to maintain this whole get up at 9 and finish off. And that's not for me, it's just because the people I'm employing, they want to they need some stability. They don't want to show up to work and find I'm just they're barely dressed, hungover, whatever. It's responsibilities. Once you're doing it to certain level of reach a certain level, and you've got employees, you've got people working on you, you've got to start being responsible, which I never really wanted to be, but that's where I'm stuck right now.
So for a long time, I worked out of my house, and that seems really great at first, because you can wake up whenever you want and wear whatever you want and eat whenever you want. But then after a while, it starts all you can think about when you're at home is work. So now we're sharing an office with another indie studio, and that's working out pretty well, because now I can separate having fun at home versus working on the game. So yeah.
I get up really early in the afternoon and go off to work. But we also due to having a team and that sort of stability and finding myself kind of in this position where I'm telling people what to do. I need to kind of be there, and so we all work together, and we spend a lot of late nights at the office, eat a lot of pizza, and kind of have a really good time. I'm actually super happy in the job that we've got and the people that I'm working with, and one of the nicest things that I've just have is I'm working with friends, and we got together as friends to make this game, and it's super awesome. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
I work out of my home, and I work over the internet with AJ. He does the story on the dialogue in the game, and I work with a guy in Tucson, and he does the music, and I work with a guy in Indianapolis. He does some of the levels, and I actually employ some interns that actually come into our home office. So I have to put on my T-shirt and dress. And like Pete was saying, for me, it's a constant mental struggle to share time with my family and like actually stop thinking about work and then be with them, enjoy that, and be a good parent and husband and stuff, and then work and then separate work from life basically. So it's tough working at home. It's a lot of discipline.
I work from home, and I have 2 kids and a wife. So yeah, essentially how it works for me is that I wake up early and just drive my son to the babysitter, to the daycare. Then I go home and I sleep some more. And then usually around 12, that's when my body feels like I can actually move and do something. So usually I work all afternoon. Usually my afternoon is usually emails, paperwork, whatnot, planning. Then I take a nice 3-hour break at least, supper, and playing a little bit with the kids. And what's funny is very often when I have like crazy deadlines coming and things get really hectic, of course it's really like everybody said here, if you work from home, it's hard to separate yourself from that and just shut that switch off. Okay, I'm not working. So often, I'll see my kid, he's been talking to me for 10 seconds, and then he goes, "Daddy, you're in the moon again." "Oh, okay, sorry, what was that?" So I asked them actually to bring me back when they say I'm drifting, because I just feel like it's so bad. It's kind of sad for them. Like, Daddy doesn't listen when I'm talking. So that gets hard on that level. But so as soon as they're in bed at 8, I usually work from 8 to 5, 8 to 6, 8 to 7 a.m. That's usually where it's my time. It's basically, I know nobody needs me or is gonna kind of come and bug me or something. So that's really my working hours. And I like working from home though, because I'm more comfortable in my pajama than jeans. So yeah.
All right, and that's actually a good answer for the next question. So I think we've got you covered there. But so the next question is to describe an average day in your life as an indie developer. So you get up, you do what until you get to the end of the day? Like, kind of let us know how that goes.
So the average day, as I would like it to be, would be just get up at 9, just work on the game all that morning, have a nice lunch, work on the game all afternoon. That almost never happens though. Like I don't really feel like I have an average day, because like being in charge, especially with a small team, it's suddenly like my days are very wildly depending on if one of them needs like a lot of help that day, or whether I'm organizing to come to an event like this, or whether I'm dealing with business stuff, or like there seems to be like always 1,001 things, like keeping up with my email backlog, anything that just everything seems to constantly get in the way of doing the thing I actually want to do. And then every now and again, I'll actually get a day where I get to work on the game. I'm like, oh, this is why I'm doing it.
So I'd say I wake up around 9 and then hang out until 11, and then I usually only work 6 hours a day. And you might be thinking, why are you a lazy bum? But it turns out there's only 2 of us on the team, so we have to be very efficient. And I've read a lot of studies on productivity, and so 40 hours a week is the most productive someone can be if they're doing like assembly line work. And that's why Henry Ford chose 40 hours. Not because he's like a nice guy who appreciates home and work life, but because that's the most amount of productivity he could get out of people. So if you work more than that, then you're actually like, you're doing negative work. You're slowing yourself down. And for creative problem solving jobs, they say between 30 and 36 hours is optimal. So that turns into about 6 or 7 hours a day. So that's why I'm not a lazy bum. But yeah, so then I do that, and so my day usually goes from 11 to 6 or 11 to 5, and then I try and I do a lot of programming, which gets you into a kind of, I don't know, a regimented way of thinking, very analytical. So then after work, I try and do like some sketching or something to break me out of the typing code and if statements and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, to reiterate what I also find it's really difficult as an indie developer, especially when you're working with a team, to stay focused on the thing at hand. Just because there are other demands. You've got to deal with people who are playing your game or people who have bought your game, and you've got to worry about like where's the money coming from next month, and are we going to talk to a publisher? Are we going to what can we negotiate with the press to maybe get some more exposure on our game? And there's actually a lot of time just kind of negotiating with people and trying to make contacts with people, and then occasionally you do get like a solid like 4 hours that you can, or an hour that you can actually use to put into the game. And I think a lot of what my job entails is trying to get other people not to have to deal with that stuff that's so distracting. I'm hoping I'm doing a fairly good job at it.
I usually get going about 10 and then answer emails for an hour or so, or read the news or something like that on the internet. And then I'll get to work until about 1, have lunch, and then I'll read for a while. And kind of like Pete's saying, I find running or reading or playing with the family good to break up and let your subconscious mind work on problems. Otherwise, I just hit my head against the wall. So I'll take a little break at lunch, and then I'll work through the afternoon. The kids will come home. We'll play through dinner, and then spend some time with my wife, and then later in the night, I'll work some more. So maybe I'll work 6 to 8 hours a day, but it's broken up into chunks throughout the day to kind of help problem solve along the way.
So yeah, you know a little bit already about my day, but essentially those are all good points, and especially the 30 to 36 hours of for kind of optimal for creative work or problem solving is that's really kind of, it's really true, because what happens is when you're making a game, obviously it's problem solving just nonstop, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but I'm basically by myself on the game. I do have friends helping me once in a while, and my composer's right here sitting in front of me, yay. And so it's me making the game, Japanese friend Miyamo doing the music, and essentially so basically what I do is my work day is very different, but what happens is you can't force some problem solving. Sometimes you just don't have the solution, you don't have something, so you do something else. And depending on how tired I become, then I switch tasks, So I'm going to do the more brain-intensive stuff, when I'm really awake, early evening. And then as the night progresses, I get more tired, and okay, I might get into copy and pasting and, a little bit more repetitive work, more simple stuff. But it really depends on the day. Sometimes you're so excited with a new feature that you've just done, and then you just go like, wow, this is so exciting, and then I get a boost all of a sudden. I'm super creative, and it's 5 a.m. and I'm like, sorry, I can't go to bed. I should go to bed, but I can't go to bed. So yeah, it can happen that my kids wake up and they're like, Dad, you're so up. Yeah, let's eat breakfast together. so yeah, sometimes when the drive just comes on, like it's just like, so that's real. I live for this kind of feeling. It's so exciting. But yeah, essentially, it's really 12 to 5, and then 8 to whenever my buddy tells me it's time that I rest a little.
All right, thank you. So next up, I think a lot of times people feel like when you're an indie developer, you're pretty much you're sitting at home and all you do is you just work on the game. Like that's your job. I'm in a home or I'm in my office or whatever, but my whole job is to work on the game. And they don't really consider the fact that you also need to sell that game, promote the game, get press, attend events to demo the game, and get feedback and make changes and that sort of thing. So what surprised you the most about becoming an indie developer? Like what did you come up against and go, oh, I never really considered that I would need to be doing that, or maybe there's something that's taking up more of your time away from development when you thought, I should be able to sit and work on this for 6 or 8 hours, but instead I'm doing something else. So what surprised you the most?
Okay, so I'm going to be a bit of a downer with my answer to this. I've talked about, obviously, my current situation is we're a small team, but my last game I worked on my own, and I worked on it for 3 years. And what surprised me the most was how miserable I ended up working on something I loved. And it's a story I don't think it's universal to all indie developers, but it's one I've certainly found other developers, certainly individual developers working on very long-term projects, that when you're when you're 2.5 years into a project, it just feels like it's never going to end, and then just day in, day out, staring at just like this thing doesn't feel like it's ever going to be good, anyone's ever going to like it, and all the pressure you've built on yourself, and seeing all these other successful developers around you, and you can actually make yourself very, very miserable, even though to some degree you're doing a dream job that everyone would love. And so that kind of surprised me the most. Thankfully, in a much better place now.
So what surprised me was, at first when I was working at home, I'd put in normal hours, programming away, and it'd feel great. And then the next day I'd be like, well, I had a good 6 hours of work. I'm gonna try playing League of Legends. Have you guys ever played League of Legends? Okay. So that was fun. And then the next day it would be like, well, I'll just do 5.5 hours of work and then start League of Legends right away. And it's research, right? League of Legends has a lot of pretty good game design, and I can play that and understand what they're doing. And then so eventually this turned into like only League of Legends, which was surprising because I consider myself pretty disciplined, but then I went 2 days in a row with no work and just League of Legends, and it was like, I have a problem, I need to stop. I had to uninstall it, so I've been good since then, but that was surprising. You learn a lot about yourself when you have to work on a project in a really small team.
This may be a bit more of a positive thing, but when I started making games, I was making it by myself in my parents' house at that stage. And I was just learning how to do this and trying to figure out what I wanted to make and what I could make and what my limitations were. And after a while, I got a game job in a small team, and then kind of started making my own games. But one of the things that sort of struck me was how indies are like these people that you meet that are all these creative, wonderful, generally, like people that just want to make games, and how much in common I had with this group of people. Like I never had that when I was making websites. Like I could meet a website designer and they're probably a decent bloke or gal or whatever, but with indies, these are all these driven people that I could see eye to eye with, and I think it's just such a wonderful community. And there's a lot of like this kind of thing where like Minecraft is reaching out to help a bunch of other developers, and like I don't know if this happens as much in other industries, but it was quite a surprise to me.
It's tough depends on your friends, I guess, but it's been tough to hold a team together sometimes because everyone is so independent and creative. They tend to, they all want to make their own thing. So I live in a town around Louisville, Kentucky, and there's only a handful of developers, and we have trouble coordinating and working on the same thing. We all make all these different things, and we're all independent, and so it's kind of like the garage band thing. It's hard holding the team together, but.
So yeah, usually, there's making the game, and then obviously in the day, you do all kind of stuff like researching events that you may want, to show your game at. It may be funding also for your game, depending on, if you're doing it full-time or part-time, and also collecting, emails of people that may be interested from, looking into your game and might want to spread the word about your game. So it's really a bunch of different tasks in a day. It's never just making the game. You always have to take some time for boring stuff, and it's really, really hard to do so. But it may be, cleaning, doing backups, because, your computer becomes sacred once you start working on it. And yeah, for me, working from home, doing all these things, it's always about setting up goals. And once you have those goals, those dates, where you want to announce something, it's all about, okay, what do I need to do in order to get, to that point? And sometimes I usually do the most boring stuff, like emails, research, registering to events, and paperwork. Whenever I don't feel inspired, I use that time to do that. and sometimes yeah, it was hard to work because I would have some friends on Skype being like, okay, we're playing Minecraft right now, go open your server. Yeah, because I'm the one hosting the server, so open your server. Okay, and then people are playing on your computer, but you're like working. Okay, I'll just come by just a little bit. Yeah, I'll go check the cave that you just did. Yeah, I'll go in. So yeah, that can be sometimes it's frustrating because when I work, it's usually when people are off work and they're taking their time off. So, but discipline.
All right, thank you. So next up is sort of a short question, but what inspires your work? Like what influences do you have in your development? Are you inspired by other games that are out there, other art, music? What is it that you see that goes? You go, hey, I really want to either incorporate that, or it makes me feel like I want to do something similar. What inspires or influences your work?
So the games I tend to make tend to be very sort of narrative driven, very about storytelling, characters, and worlds. So I actually actively try not to draw too much from video games, because otherwise you get this horrible sort of echo chamber of games being like other games, being like other games. So I actually am very influenced by theatre, especially like when I lived in London, I would go to see a lot of productions and just take inspiration from the kind of different ways they experiment with how to tell stories and how to create environments. In London, there's a theatre company called Punch Drunk, and they create basically, rather than plays you watch, they create worlds you explore. So they create the whole world, and you just wander around freely, and the actors interact with you. And I'm very inspired by that kind of stuff, of just how you can experiment with storytelling rather than taking the traditional approaches we've seen in games up until now.
So I tend to like to make strategy and simulation games, and I think that started when I was a kid and I played Sim Tower obsessively. If you guys have ever played Sim Tower, yeah, pretty awesome. So for our current game, Cannon Brawl, some of the inspirations were Gunbound and Worms, the destructible terrain type games, and then I'm a huge fan of RTS, so like StarCraft and Warcraft 3 before it became a gigantic online world. But yeah.
Well, for our current game, we're working on Broforce. We kind of, I suppose, wearing our inspiration on our sleeves. Rambo's in the game, so a lot of the Rambo movies were watched to kind of get to that point. Well, I'd watched them, and then we kind of started this game because we thought it would be really funny to make a game about Rambo and Commando kind of saving the world from terrorists, because I suppose that's what they do in 2013. And then we went back, and we're watching, like, every weekend we watch like bad 90s and 80s movies, and they're so good. They are amazing. Like Hollywood just, I don't know, it's like a golden age of like terrible action films, and I recommend all of you just going back and watching them and just realizing what's missing in films of today, all that awfulness.
So for Piggy Ball, it kind of worked off of like Pac-Man, Mario Kart, Mario Galaxy, all of those kind of games, and probably the co-op part, the 4-player part of it. It's not tacked on. It's in there because just seeing all this kind of co-op fun. It's so much fun to play with somebody in the same room. And I do like online games, but I love being in there with when you can get somebody over. It's a lot of fun to play with them. And then outside of games, just everything like nature and politics and art. And I don't know if any of that shows up in the game itself, but it feels like it. It helps.
I guess it just comes down to I wish I had a time machine and I could go back in time and make a Super Nintendo game. Although all my friends and programmers, people that know a little bit more about that era, tells me you wouldn't like it because your computer wouldn't be strong and your programs would suck. And so yeah, for sure, it's understandable. But the game that I'm making right now and is really inspired by all those games. I'm a big retro video game collector, and for me, NES and SNES games are the kind of golden age of gaming for me. Big console gamer. So yeah, I try to capture the essence of a lot of those games on SNES and NES that I just would play like crazy, after school and in my head at school. So yeah, I just try to get all these and kind of make a game that feels like, you can feel that it's a bunch of all those different games mashed into one, and it's a game that I want to play for myself. So it draws on the influences and inspirations that really captured my imagination as a kid.
Thank you. All right, next up is what do you feel is the key to being successful as an indie developer? Somebody's got to pay the bills. How do you guys work that out?
So I feel like this is unintentionally a trick question in the sense that, so I'm going to have to give two answers because it depends really what you consider being successful. Whether you consider successful being making a really great game that you're proud of, or whether it's making the money to keep on living. So if your one goal is really you just want to make a great game, then my advice would be to ignore all of their advice. Is just make the game you want to make, because almost certainly whatever you make, lots of people are going to chime in and tell you, oh, it should be like this, it should be like this, this does well, this is how you make money, and lots of people will give you advice that might steer you away from making the game that you love and would be happy with. And I would always say, if that's your goal, do that. And there's lots of great indie developers out there who don't make a living from games, but they make amazing games regardless, and I have a lot of respect for that. If it's about money, if you want to be successful money-wise, then I think marketing is probably the biggest thing. As lovely as this event here, the reason I've traveled all the way from the UK is because, I have to promote my games. And it's like a lot of developers out there I know don't want to do that. They'd rather just make a good game, have it speak for itself. But sadly, if you want to make money, I think getting your game in front of a lot of people and doing it as regularly and as almost aggressively as possible is sadly the reality of how you do that. So
I think being successful as an indie is the same as being successful at anything. Like wherever you are in your path on anything, you just have to think, like, what is the next step to make me better, and then do it, and then just keep doing that every day, forever, basically. So, like for games, you just start out with a really ugly, horrible game, and then you think, what is the next step that's going to make this more fun or interesting or whatever you're going for, and then you do it. And after you've done that step, like 600 days in a row, which is us, then you end up with a pretty cool game, I think anyway. And then the other thing that you can run into as an indie developer is kind of a counterpoint to your vision. But like I've played a lot of other developers' games, nobody here, but where you play it and you offer feedback, like I was confused here, or this seems a little strange. Maybe it should be this other way, and they'll just cross their arms and they'll say, well, you don't get what I'm going for. This is my vision. It's my vision to make a confusing game that doesn't make sense. So you have to watch out for that, because when you're making a game, you're like, this is my vision and it's great, and like they don't get what I'm going for. But like you have to kind of get rid of your ego and be willing to accept feedback. Not all of it, but yeah. So.
Just to actually kind of also talk about feedback again, I think one of the things that a lot of people sort of assume, which I think is incorrect, but maybe it works for some people. But then when you start out making games, you got like, I know exactly what the games I want to make are, and I'll just be able to make them. And you'll make it, and it'll be terrible, and guaranteed it will be terrible. And the thing is, like, it's such a complicated process, and as soon as you start making something, you've spent like 3 months on it. You're so close to this thing now, and you've got so many thoughts in your head about what it really is, or what it might be, a year from now, that you can't really evaluate this thing at all. And you need to get other people to play it. Like, I think as soon as someone else plays it, and you get to be able to learn to see it through other people's eyes, you listen to them earnestly, and you try work out, he said it was like confusing, but what does he really mean? Should it just, have I got the wrong color or something? Try work out to how to understand people's feedback, and it's a skill in itself. And the only way you're going to really get good is through constantly getting people playing your games right from the start. You want people playing your games. And the other thing about that, I suppose, is to be successful, you've got to be able to put in that 6 hours a day, and you've got to be able to be inspired. And that, for me, comes from people playing my game. Like, there's nothing more inspiring than someone just gave it a try and they said, oh, I exploded, and then all my friends died, and then we started again and did it again, and then we still, and we played for 13 hours straight, and like, just dying. And then that really makes me happy, and and then I want to work extra hard the next day, and that's so I just want to say, don't work in secret, get people to play your games.
Yeah, I think the being able to accept feedback is a really good point. That definitely helps a lot, because when some of the younger kids are out there playing our game on the show floor and they mess up, I usually think, man, I bet they're not doing that because they hate me. But it feels like it. When you watch somebody mess up in your game, you're like, oh, this is going horribly. But it's not like they're trying to do something wrong. That's just how they're doing it. So now you got to figure out, do you want that to happen? Did you want to make them frustrated when they were playing your game? Or did you want to do a better job with it? And then the other part is, early on, I think it's perfectly fine to copy the masters. I think it's totally fine to make a normal kind of Mario game, whatever you want to do. But then if you are branching out and you're trying to say something, to really just be as earnest and original as possible, to try to, if you're going to put 3 years of your life into something, try to make it say something that you care about. So that helps me motivation-wise.
Sure is a big mix of so many elements. Like for me, my magic, my kind of special weapon is my gut feeling. I mean, you just feel it. When it's right, you feel it, so you can't lie to yourself. I mean, when you're excited about something, that's it. After that, and sometimes it gets kind of hard, because sometimes you can be thinking too much, like, oh, but what would people like here, or what would people want? And it's this voice is constantly there, because a part of you wants the game to succeed financially so you can make another game. But at the same time, you constantly have to protect, like, your vision. No, I'm making this kind of game. If I want to release it, so it's kind of fighting this kind of voice that's like, oh yeah, but this is hot right now. This could probably fit in. Oh yeah, I'm thinking I'm gonna add my character will have a pickaxe now, and he's gonna get some materials, and it's easy to drift off and go into this kind of. I mean, it happened with iPhone games. Angry Birds started making millions, and everybody's like, that's it. I'm making angry pigs, and so it happened. So it's you have to. For me, like being an indie at home, and I mean, I tried to route like Angry Birds or things like that. I tried a few things, and at some point I just realized I can't be somebody else, and I can't do something that I'm not excited and truly passionate about. So for me, it's really just like, what this want to do, and after that, it's really putting it in other people's hands. Like an event like this is just great. Like kids that are coming by, because usually the events that I've done so far, it's younger teens and up. So seeing younger guys playing the games is really exciting, because I know nowadays it's not when I was young, and everybody's got computers, iPhones, so it's like, hey mom, I touched this button and now I have 10 new games on the iPhone. And back in the days, it was like, get in the car, go to the game shop, and so you had to convince your dad to like. So like the world is totally different now, and everything's accessible so quick. That and also, like for me, especially making a retro game, is I really want to bring back that retro feel and play with a controller. So sometimes it's almost like, hey, what's this? There's buttons on it. So the game's not on the screen as the so but yeah, it's really exciting, but it's really complicated. And like they mentioned, your first game might suck, and it's a learning process. So it's really just to also compare yourself to what's out there. I mean, sometimes you don't have to really ask someone to play test something basic when you can compare yourself to something's already there. But yeah, it's always ask for feedback. I mean, and that goes for anybody. If you're aspiring artists, musicians, whatever, it's always a question of feedback, and saying people like, well, you know what, I felt like this was kind of weird, or it didn't feel right, or okay, cool, okay. And then you go in, and they might not give you the solution, but at least they're like, okay, there's a problem there, I need to reflect on it. So yeah, you just got to be aware. That's a magic word, I guess.
All right, thank you very much. So at this point, we're running through 40 minutes here. We've got a few minutes to take some questions from the audience. So we'll let whoever wants to answer the question grab a mic and go for it. So we've got this gentleman right here. Go for it.
First, I would say you gotta do you have any commute time at all? Do you have some time where you can actually grab a notebook and just throw your ideas on a piece of paper? Yeah, so I would say that's the starting point. You got to find out, because sometimes, you know, a lot of people are like, hey, I want to make games. Okay, what kind of games do you want to make? I want, you know, so maybe you just want to do something on a game, because making a whole game by yourself is crazy work. But maybe that's what you want to do. So the best thing is, first you got to try. Like, and the best thing I would say is, first write your ideas. If you have a game idea, write your idea, and then just look on the internet. There's so many game engines available. So I would say just go in and try some of these, see how it feels. You know, explore a little bit, learn slowly, and then as you play with these engines, you'll see what you like the most. Is it coding? Is it doing art? Do you like doing all that stuff? Is it just the game ideas? You know, are you? Because some people will be more like, you know, I just want to design games. I don't want to do any art for it. I don't want to. So it's just finding yourself through that, and just slowly, by trying these things, you'll slowly find your way and see what you want to do. And
I just wanted to say about that, just like for your first game, just when you're getting into games, don't try something big. Just scope it down to like one little thing that you can put in someone's hand and they can play. And that could be Pong, that could be Space Invaders. And then that's gonna, and then you know, then you can experiment with that. But keep the scope as small as you can possibly get to make something playable. And then next game can be bigger. Yeah.
So when I started out at Electronic Arts, that was what I did. Someone said, write this code. And I said, yes, I can write this code. And I'll do it fast and it'll be great. And like, if you want to do that, it's awesome. But then people will start telling you to like write this code and add this feature to the game. And you're like, well, I've been playing the game and that feature's not very good. And because this person is your boss, they're like, well, I don't care, do it anyway. And then when that happens enough times, you start to think like, you know, I'm pretty good at writing code, and I think I can make better decisions than the people telling me what to do. So then that's when you take on the extra work of, I'm gonna write the code and I'm gonna manage a team and do all this other stuff, because I can make the most use of my time in this world by doing my own thing.
yeah, for me, it's a question of what drives you. I go home, I have game ideas. I feel like doing some art, you know, for it, and usually something spawns something else. So if I have a game idea, then it's gonna spawn some art ideas, and it's everything. And when I was working as a 3D artist, modeling, you know, just one environment for a game or some assets, I feel like I go home and I'm like, I can do more than that. I'm more than that, you know. So that's one thing. But at the same time, once you start working on your own games, and you realize like, okay, maybe it was easier just to sit at my desk, shut up, and get that salary, you know. So it's because it is harder. Like right now, I'm like, oh man, this is crazy. I used to just wake up, get in a bus, go to work, and like, you know, if I don't agree with something, I'll flag it, and if it doesn't get changed, then that's it, you know. Because at the end of the game, it's not my photo with my name on the box, you know. I mean, yeah, I work on the game, but if 80 other people are just like, yeah, this is fine, and I'm like, then, you know, it's gonna stay like that. So it's really what you want to do. I mean, it's, if you want to be indie developer just because it's cool, that's the wrong way to approach it. I mean, you know, if you like coding and you're happy to code for someone, getting good money, that's perfect. For me, it's just a whole question of I got to create something that's what I was born to do, kind of thing. So it's really it's up to you. Both are good.
We have time for another question. Right here in the back.
big, cute eyes on it.
I would
No, I don't have anything.
I would say you've got to really, I mean, in terms of financial success, you've got to really keep an eye on what the trends are going to be. Because right now, everyone who's making lots of money as an indie will probably tell you to be on Steam. But the thing is, those same people about 3 or 4 years ago would have told you it would be to be an Xbox Live Arcade game. And you've really just got to be keeping an eye on where the money's being made right now. And the problem with that is that you can end up just chasing like the latest gold rush, but it's just trying to make the smartest decisions of which platforms to be on. Because like right now, like Nintendo, for example, they're very actively recruiting indies, and I'm working with them, but they have to admit themselves that I'm not going to make a lot of money there. And it's like, so you've got to be making the choices based on where, by talking to other indies who are selling games and trying to make the right decisions of where to go, basically. In terms of making money, that seems to be the best approach.
For me, I've made money generally when I've worked on a game that I've wanted to play myself, and somehow I managed to make a sort of game that kind of ended up being a game that I would have played and other people would have played. So if you can feel there's a demand for something, like you can rely on that, like your gut instinct. Like there is no good Diablo-like on iOS that I want to play right now. Well, why not make one? You know, assuming you can achieve that. I mean, and that's the other thing. Like, make the games that know your limitations and find something that you can make that that other people would want.
It's like the hardest part. Making money and making the games you want to make, I think, is the hardest part, because not only do you have to make a game, you also have to strike it rich, which apparently, you know what I mean? That could be a goal, you know.
All right, so that's going to do it for the questions. I'd like to thank all the panelists here: Nathan Fouts, Mo, Evan Greenwood, Pete Angstadt, and Richard Perrin. If you haven't already, be sure to stop by the Indie area and check out Pig Eat Ball and Broforce, Cannon Brawl, and Journal. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming, guys.